The stellar convergence stretched before them, a colossal space station hovering at the edge of the universe's most ancient star system, surrounded by a nebula that shimmered in shades of violet, gold, and sapphire. The station's towering spires, crafted from a material older than the stars themselves, glowed with an ethereal light. Every inch of the celestial nexus seemed alive with purpose, pulsing in sync with the heart of the universe. At its center, suspended in the vacuum of space, was a vault of echoes, an ancient arena built into the very fabric of space-time, floating among the stars. The vault was a grand structure, built from fragments of long-forgotten planets, seamlessly held together by the gravity of a dying black hole. Its walls pulsed with an energy so old it hummed in a frequency no human ear could detect. Above, the sky glowed with streaks of cosmic energy, remnants of the first stars, while beneath the floating arena, an infinite abyss of dark matter swirled like a hungry ocean. As the arena slowly came to life, the crowd began to gather. Alien species from the farthest reaches of the galaxy filled the stands, their forms as diverse and strange as the galaxies themselves. Multi-limbed beings with bodies made of liquid light drifted silently above the arena, their glowing forms shifting like liquid glass. Massive, serpentine creatures with scales that reflected the stars coiled around the outer edges of the stadium, their multiple eyes scanning the arena with unnatural intelligence. Among the crowd, beings of gas swirled in protective containment spheres, their ethereal whispers resonating with an ancient song no one fully understood. One corner of the stand was taken by creatures of pure metal, their sharp edges gleaming with the brilliance of 1,000 suns, while on the far side, insectoid warriors with armored exoskeletons clacked their mandibles in rhythmic anticipation. The significance of this gathering was immense. Every 1,000 years, the stellar convergence brought together the greatest minds, warriors, and mystics of the galaxy. This wasn't just a tournament. It was a test of strength, wit, and the will to uncover the secrets of a forgotten planet, Viridian, lost to time. Whoever emerged victorious from a vault of echoes would gain not only unimaginable power, but the key to unlocking the hidden world and the legendary artifacts said to reside there. This was no ordinary contest. It was a race to unearth the truth behind the galaxy's greatest mystery. The atmosphere thrummed with an electric charge, the energy building to a crescendo as the first challenge loomed. The crowd fell silent, and all eyes turned toward the shimmering doorway at the center of the arena, where the trials were about to begin. Zara Voss stood at the edge of the vault of echoes, her fingers brushing the metallic surface of her helmet as she stared out at the vast expanse of the arena. The weight of the moment was lost on her, where others were nervously adjusting their gear or muttering silent prayers to long-forgotten gods. Zara simply tucked her hair behind her ear, checked the calibrations on her outdated wrist computer, and yawned. She wasn't like the others. While most of the other competitors were decked out in high-tech, battle-ready suits designed to withstand the harshest of environments, Zara wore a mismatched jumpsuit, one that had seen better days, its faded blue fabric patched with scraps of cloth and tape from countless adventures. The only real piece of equipment she wore was a rusted, modified laser rifle slung over her shoulder, a relic from her last dig on a derelict mining colony. It wasn't exactly state-of-the-art, but it was hers. Around her, the vault was buzzing with intense preparation. Warrior priests meditated in deep concentration, their eyes glowing with psionic energy, while scholars adjusted holographic maps of the galaxy's most ancient constellations. Several alien competitors, towering and otherworldly, silently tested their weapons, their multi-limbed bodies moving with precision and grace. Their focus was absolute. Zara? She was busy chewing on a granola bar and absent-mindedly scrolling through old space travel blogs on her wrist device. She wasn't nervous. If anything, she was more excited about getting a decent meal once this whole thing was over. "Hey!" Zara called out casually to a nearby alien competitor, a humanoid creature with translucent skin and shifting, glowing veins. "You know where I can grab a drink around here? Something with caffeine, if they have it." The alien blinked, its bioluminescent eyes flickering in confusion. It was a small, delicate creature, one that looked as though it had never experienced a casual conversation in its life. It tilted its head, assessing her, before applying a series of clicks and harmonic tones. Okay." Zara nodded, not understanding a word. "But I'm pretty sure there's no coffee in your language." "Got it." She turned back to her preparation station, humming to herself as she casually checked the various components of her gear, taking no notice of the tension that gripped the others. To them, this was the event of a lifetime, the culmination of years of training, hardship, and sacrifice. To Zara, it was just another day, one that she could probably get through without overthinking it. Zara's casual attitude was a stark contrast to the focused, battle-hardened competitors around her. They were beings of vast intellect, honed by millennia of experience, their species gifted with power beyond human comprehension. Yet here she was, just a human with a wry smile, an old rifle, and a half-eaten snack. If anyone had underestimated her, it was their mistake. Zara didn't need to look the part of a galactic champion. She just needed to prove she could win. One competitor, a towering insectoid warrior covered in gleaming obsidian armor, eyed her with visible disdain, its mandibles clicking in what could only be interpreted as a low growl. It was the sort of reaction Zara was used to. No one believed the human would last. But then again, Zara had never cared for what people expected of her. With a stretch and a lazy grin, Zara grabbed her helmet and slipped it on, the faint hum of the arena's force fields pulsing through her body. "All right," she muttered to herself. "Let's see what this thing's got." As the others filed into the arena, Zara followed at a leisurely pace, unfazed by the looming challenge ahead. To them, this would be a fight for glory. To Zara, it was just another adventure, and she was always up for those. In this introduction, Zara's casual, laid-back attitude and unconventional preparation stand in stark contrast to the intense competitors around her, immediately setting her apart as the underdog protagonist. Her human quirks, her relaxed demeanor, her snack eating, and her lack of formal gear defy the high-tech, serious expectations of the event, building intrigue about how she'll hold her own in the competition as the competitors assembled in the vault of echoes, the arena's massive doors sealed with reverberating hum. The crowd fell into an expectant silence, waiting for the event to begin. But before the first challenge could unfold, the announcer's voice boomed through the arena, a voice as old as the galaxy itself. "The stellar convergence is upon us." The voice resonated. "This is not merely a test of strength. It is a test of destiny." Zara's fingers brushed against the worn strap of her rifle as she surveyed the other competitors. Her eyes caught on one particular figure, a hulking, battle-worn warrior standing across the arena, calm and composed amid the chaos. His presence cut through the buzzing excitement like a blade through fabric. He was a being of such legendary status that the other competitors instinctively gave him a wide berth. This was General Arath, the undefeated champion of the stellar convergence for over 5 centuries, a living legend whose name was whispered in awe across the galaxy. With his immense stature, he towered over the others, his armor forged from the shattered bones of a long-extinct species, a testament to his brutal victories. His glowing, crimson eyes were fixed forward, unwavering. He was the embodiment of the old ways, strength, discipline, and honor, and he had never once been defeated. Zara felt the weight of the challenge pressing down on her. Aratha's mere presence made the stakes feel real in a way they hadn't before. His reputation was a shadow that loomed over the entire event, casting doubt on any competitor who dared to face him. Every other challenger revered Arath, treating him like an immovable force. The odds against Zara were as impossible as they came. After all, she was just a human with outdated gear, a questionable track record, and an unassuming attitude. Her odds of winning were laughable at best, statistically written off as a fluke. The first challenge began with a sudden, loud burst of sound, an ancient bell ringing across the arena, its sound resonating to the very core of the station. The ground beneath them began to shift, the arena's floor sliding open in a massive, twisting formation. A deep chasm opened at the center, revealing the first trial, a survival gauntlet that spanned the entire length of the vault, filled with lethal traps, shifting environments, and hostile alien creatures. Zara's heart raced. This wasn't the kind of thing she had trained for. This wasn't some light-hearted space scavenger hunt. But as she looked over at Arath, her pulse quickened for a different reason. The legendary general was already walking toward the challenge, his steps calm and deliberate, his confidence radiating like the heat from a star. She had no illusions. This was no game. If she wanted to make it out of this alive, she would have to push herself beyond the limits of what she thought was possible. But it wasn't just a trial that she had to overcome. It was Aroth, the embodiment of the old ways, the champion who had crushed the hopes of countless others. He would be the greatest obstacle of all. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The ground trembled as the first wave of attackers, a pack of razor-clawed, shadowy beasts, charged in the depths of the chasm. The crowd roared in excitement. Aroth, with a single motion, drew his colossal weapon and met the creatures head-on, cutting them down with terrifying precision. His strikes were flawless, as though the very arena itself bent to his will. He moved through the beasts like a predator in its prime. Zara hesitated. She wasn't equipped for this kind of combat. Her rifle felt too small, too unreliable in the face of such ferocity. But she had one thing the others didn't: her wits. Without hesitation, Zara darted to the side, using the cover of the arena's shifting terrain to avoid the creature's sharp claws. She was fast, nimble, a contrast to the brute force that Aroth brought to the fight. She didn't have his strength, but she had something just as valuable: the ability to think on her feet, to improvise when things went wrong. The tension in the arena heightened as the fight between Aroth and the beasts reached its climax. But Zara wasn't focused on the victory of the general. She was focused on surviving long enough to make it to the next challenge, knowing that with each moment that passed, the odds stacked against her grew taller. Aroth's eyes flicked at her for a brief moment, a cold, assessing gaze that sent a chill down her spine. He knew she was no threat, but that didn't matter. Zara's fight wasn't just against him. It was against the expectation of failure, the weight of the galaxy's doubts, and the ghosts of her past. If she was going to make it through this, it wouldn't be because of her gear, her strength, or even her intelligence. It would be because she refused to back down. And in that moment, Zara made her choice. She wasn't here to play by anyone's rules, especially not Aroth's. The first challenge was only the beginning, and the echoes of Viridian were growing louder with every passing second. As the vault of echoes opened up for the next trial, Zara Voss took her place at the starting line, eyeing the treacherous landscape ahead. It was a maze of crumbling ancient structures, covered in thick vines that seemed to pulse with a life of their own, while the ground beneath her feet shifted with invisible currents, ready to swallow anything that wasn't quick enough. The clock above the arena began ticking down, and competitors around her were already going through their calculated warm-ups, some meditating, others stretching in ways that looked more like ancient rituals than physical exercises. The tension in the air was thick, and every eye was on competitors, waiting for them to spring into action. Zara, however, had a different idea. She stood at the starting line, hands on her hips, eyeing the obstacles ahead. She had no intention of wasting time on traditional preparation. While others were deep in concentration, Zara took a moment to unzip the side of her jumpsuit, revealing a bright, neon green t-shirt beneath it. The front read, "World's Okayest Scavenger," and she gave an exaggerated, overly dramatic stretch, as though she was prepping for a light jog through a park rather than an intergalactic survival gauntlet. Nearby, a sleek, insectoid competitor with shimmering silver armor eyed her with disdain, its many eyes narrowing in judgment. Zara couldn't help but wink at it. "Don't worry, buddy," she said loudly, though no one could understand her language. "This is just my pre-trial snack time." Then, in one fluid motion, she pulled out a crinkling snack bar from her utility belt, tearing open the wrapper with a flourish. She took a big, exaggerated bite, the crunch of it echoing through the otherwise silent arena. The competitors around her glanced sideways, their eyes filled with confusion, as though they had never seen someone casually eat a snack in the middle of a high-stakes galactic tournament. A mechanical competitor, its body composed entirely of shifting gears and hydraulic limbs, stuttered slightly in its movements, likely confused by Zara's apparent disregard for the intensity of the moment. It emitted a sharp series of beeps, which, if Zara had to guess, was probably some form of judgment or ridicule. "Yep, I'm just going to enjoy my granola bar while you all stress out," Zara quipped to no one in particular, tossing the empty wrapper behind her. As the countdown neared its end, Zara wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked at her rifle. She gave it a tap, as if making sure it was still working. "All right, time to get this show on the road," she muttered to herself, smiling. Just as the countdown hit 0 and the arena shifted into its deadly configuration, Zara's reaction was anything but expected. Rather than running headfirst into the maze like the others, she stretched, yawned, and casually walked to the first obstacle, an enormous, shifting stone platform suspended above a chasm filled with glowing alien flora. With a playful smirk, Zara turned to the nearest competitor, a towering being made of solid crystal that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The alien blinked, its crystalline eyes reflecting the lights of the arena. "So, what's the deal here?" Zara asked casually, placing one foot on the platform and bouncing lightly as though testing a trampoline. "Do I just jump? Or is there some complicated, secret method I'm missing here?" The crystal being let out a strange, harmonious hum, which Zara interpreted as a mix of confusion and amusement. Without waiting for an answer, she kicked off the ground, launching herself across the gap in a wild, uncontrolled jump, arms flailing as she barely cleared the edge of the stone platform. The alien's eyes widened and the crowd gasped in surprise. Zara landed with a dramatic roll, completely ungraceful, but somehow managing to stick the landing. She shot a thumbs up toward the arena's observation deck. "Ooh, that was fun," she shouted, grinning ear to ear. "Next one, please." The crystal competitor, utterly perplexed, simply tilted its head as it floated gracefully across the gap, making Zara's landing look like a botched rehearsal. As she continued to the trial, Zara's unconventional approach became clear. She was taking each obstacle in her stride, not with the precision and deadly focus of the other competitors, but with a kind of unorthodox energy that was both baffling and oddly entertaining. When faced with a wall of thorny vines, most of the other contestants attempted to carefully dissect the obstacle with precise, laser-cut tools or force fields. Zara, on the other hand, simply ran headfirst into the wall, her body bouncing off it as the vines recoiled with surprising speed. She quickly rolled out of the way and gave an exaggerated, mock bow to the still-recovering vines. "Ah, nothing like a little natural obstacle course," she said, dusting herself off. "Who needs lasers when you've got raw enthusiasm?" The audience, which had previously been watching in silent awe of the calculated and graceful competitors, erupted into unexpected laughter. Zara's unpredictability, her sheer refusal to adhere to the unspoken rules of this grand event, was something no one had expected. Even the robotic competitors hesitated, momentarily unsure of how to process the spectacle unfolding before them. By the time Zara reached the final stretch of the trial, the atmosphere in the arena had shifted. She wasn't just a human underdog anymore. She had become a spectacle in her own right, a force of nature, chaotic and wild, taking the challenges head-on in the most unconventional ways. And while the rest of the competitors might have been laser-focused on survival, Zara had found a way to bring humor into it, reminding everyone that sometimes the unexpected path was the one that led to greatness. With a grin, Zara reached the final platform, looked back at the still-sputtering crystal being who had just cleared the last obstacle with immaculate precision, and waved. "Better luck next time, champ," she said with a wink. And for the first time that day, the arena roared, not just with the excitement of a new challenge, but with the strange, infectious charm of a human who refused to be anything but herself. The next round of stellar convergence was nothing like the first. The stakes had risen, and the challenges were more dangerous, more complex. Zara moved with an unhurried pace, seemingly unfazed by the increasing difficulty, as her competitors shifted into overdrive, utilizing their advanced abilities with cold precision. Her first opponent, a hulking, multi-limbed creature called Thraxer, towered over her, a massive beast made entirely of dense, shifting metal plates. Each limb was like a serrated blade, capable of slicing through solid rock with ease. Thraxer didn't waste time on words. It stepped forward, each massive footfall shaking the arena, ready to crush her with overwhelming force. The arena buzzed with anticipation. Thraxer's reputation was one of brutal, relentless efficiency. Everyone expected Zara to be pulverized in seconds. Zara, however, yawned. "All right, big guy," she muttered, glancing over her shoulder. "Let's see what we can do here." With no time to waste, Thraxer lunged forward, its metal arms whirling through the air with blinding speed. But Zara? She calmly stepped to the side, casually sidestepping the attack like it was a Tuesday afternoon jog. "Whoa! You're a bit eager, aren't you?" she said, tossing a quick wink to crowd. The crowd went silent in confusion. Thraxer blinked, its mechanical mind processing the absurdity of her reaction, and its massive arm snapped back to try again. But Zara, instead of evading, reached into her utility belt and pulled out a small, red laser pointer. Without any hesitation, she aimed it directly at Thraxer's chest, clicking the button with a dramatic flourish. A sharp red beam shot out. Thraxer froze mid-attack, its eyes locking onto the red, like it was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Its mechanical mind scrambled, desperately trying to focus on something else, but the incessant red light was too distracting. Its massive arms, once used to wrecking everything in their path, became useless as it struggled with the simplicity of the red. The crowd gasped. Thraxer, the indomitable, unstoppable force, was completely stymied by a simple toy. "Gotcha!" Zara called out, not missing a beat. "You might want to get that checked out, buddy." Thraxer let out a frustrated mechanical growl, swiping wildly at the air, but Zara wasn't there anymore. She darted forward, weaving through its flailing limbs with uncanny agility, and reached the center of the arena, away from the distracted Titan. In a blur, she tossed a small device on the ground, releasing a cloud of bright, glittering smoke. When it cleared, Thraxer stood frozen in place, utterly confused, still chasing after the now non-existent red. Zara had moved on to the next challenge, her unconventional methods leaving her opponent and the audience speechless. "Is that really it? I mean, come on. I thought we were doing combat, not cat tricks," she quipped, grinning from ear to ear. As Zara jogged toward the next trial, the crowd couldn't help but laugh and cheer. Thraxer, meanwhile, was still stumbling around in the fog, trying to find the red dot. The next opponent came with no less spectacle. Vorax, a towering telekinetic with the ability to manipulate the very fabric of space, stood waiting for her. It was a force to be reckoned with. This alien could twist matter, distort reality, and create weapons from thin air. Zara watched as Vorax effortlessly lifted a chunk of the arena's floor and sent it spiraling toward her. Zara smirked. This was definitely going to be interesting. But instead of dodging or trying to block the attack, Zara reached into her pocket and pulled out an old handheld fan, the kind you'd use to cool yourself off on a hot day. She waved it slowly in front of her face, her eyes closing as if she were enjoying a sunny afternoon. "Phew, getting a little warm in here," she said with a grin, the massive chunk of arena flooring rushing straight at her. The telekinetic blast was fast, but Zara's reaction was faster. At the last possible moment, she flicked the fan towards a massive chunk of rock, as if it were a mere annoyance. The fan released a burst of compressed air, just enough to shift the trajectory of the attack. The rock veered off course, slamming harmlessly into the arena wall. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Did she just deflect a telekinetic attack with a fan? Someone murmured in the stands. Vorax, still hovering in midair, stared at Zara with a mix of bewilderment and frustration. The telekinetic warrior raised its hands, causing several objects to materialize out of thin air, a series of jagged, spinning blades that hovered menacingly in front of her. Zara tilted her head, examining the floating weapons. She pulled out a small mirror from her belt, checking her reflection with exaggerated care. "Man, you really put a lot of effort into this, huh?" she said, giving the blades a casual wave as they hovered before her. In one swift move, she held the mirror in the path of blades, and their reflections caused a minor glitch in Vorax's concentration. The blades wavered for a split second, enough time for Zara to dart forward and grab a loose piece of debris, using it to knock Vorax's telekinetic constructs out of the air. "What? You didn't think I'd have something in my bag of tricks, did you?" Zara called, laughing as she vaulted over a final obstacle. Vorax was stunned. The crowd, still unsure if they were watching a brilliant strategy or complete madness, let out a collective cheer. Zara's approach was a far cry from the traditional, calculated methods that her opponents employed. It was chaotic, spontaneous, and thoroughly unpredictable, and somehow it was working. By the time the third match concluded with Zara having once again tricked a reality-bending adversary into a confused mess, the audience was on the edge of their seats, unable to look away from the whirlwind that was Zara Voss. Zara didn't seem like a traditional champion, but that was exactly why she was making it so far. Every time the odds stacked against her, she proved that maybe, just maybe, the old ways weren't the only way to win. The arena lights flickered overhead, casting long, sharp shadows across the control room. High in the observation tower, Vorix, the telekinetic prodigy, watched Zara Voss's last match replay on the holographic display. Each scene played out with unnerving clarity, each moment more baffling than the last. Vorix's many eyes flickered between frustration and disbelief, its usually calm demeanor now frayed by Zara's unorthodox approach. How? Vorix muttered under its breath, clicking its mandibles in confusion. How did she? The scene replayed again. Zara, holding up a simple hand fan to deflect a telekinetic projectile, the mirror reflection causing Vorix's finely tuned constructs to veer off course. The audience had roared with laughter, but to Vorix, it was a punch to the gut. The confidence with which Zara had approached the battle, her complete disregard for the traditional methods of combat. It was maddening. Vorix leaned forward in its chair, tapping a clawed finger against the control panel. This isn't combat, it hissed, eyes narrowing. This is chaos. The telekinetic competitor had spent centuries honing its craft, mastering the art of creating weapons from pure thought, warping reality to its will. Every move it made was the result of years of disciplined control. A methodical warrior, trained in tradition. And yet, here was Zara, this human, this wild card, defeating it with nothing but the most absurd, unpredictable tactics. A fan, a mirror, a laser pointer. It made no sense. Vorix closed its eyes, trying to center itself, attempting to focus on the task at hand. But the more it thought about Zara, the more it felt like its carefully constructed world was slipping away. She didn't follow the rules. Zara wasn't playing by the same rules Vorix had followed, had been taught to follow for centuries. No, Zara was breaking something deeper, something fundamental. You're not supposed to play like that, Vorix whispered, its voice trembling with a strange mixture of rage and awe. You're not supposed to think like that. For all its intelligence, Vorix had never encountered someone who could defy the very foundation of combat strategy. It had trained for speed, for strength, for precision. The classics, the tried-and-true methods that had been passed down for eons. But Zara was turning all of that upside down, breaking down the sacred rules of the arena with each laugh and unexpected move. The hum of the arena reverberated to the walls of the control room, its energy shifting as the next round approached. Vorix's many limbs twitched in agitation. It had watched warriors come and go, beaten down by the unforgiving trials, defeated by the precision and power of its telekinetic force. But Zara was a different kind of threat. It wasn't just that she had defeated Vorix or Thraxer, it was the fact that she had humiliated them. She had thrown their perfect worlds into disarray. This human wasn't just a challenge. She was a disruption. You can't win with chaos, Vorix murmured, staring at the replay of Zara waving her fan. The sharp sting of humiliation burned beneath its scales, a feeling unfamiliar and uncomfortable. You can't defeat tradition by breaking it. And yet, deep down, Vorix knew something it had never considered before. Maybe Zara's chaotic, unpredictable approach was its own kind of tradition. Maybe the only thing Vorix had ever really known was a narrow way of thinking. Maybe, just maybe, it was Vorix who was the one breaking the game. A sudden thought cut to the haze of frustration. What if this human truly is a challenge? The idea lingered. Zara had something that none of Vorix's other opponents had ever possessed, the ability to bend the arena to her will without even realizing it. She didn't need to control the game through precision or force. She simply had to be herself. It was an unpredictable chaos, yes. But what if that was its own kind of mastery? The telekinetic being clenched its fists, its eyes narrowing in determination. Zara was no longer just a human underdog. She was a force of nature, wild, untamable, and most of all, dangerous. The realization hit harder than any telekinetic blast could. Next time, I won't underestimate you, Zara Voss, Vorix muttered, voice low and fierce. Next time, I'll fight your fight, and I will win. But in the back of its mind, a whisper of doubt lingered. Was it too late to adapt to this new kind of challenge? The energy in the arena had shifted. What had started as a spectacle of tradition and honor was now something else entirely, something unpredictable, something that had never been seen before. Zara Voss stood in the preparation chamber, rolling her shoulders as she glanced up at the massive holographic leaderboard. Her name, once an afterthought buried at the bottom, now flashed in bold letters at the very top. Zara Voss, finalist. The betting markets across the galaxy flickered and glitched, struggling to process the statistical impossibility of a human, one with no formal training, no ancestral lineage, no mastery of cosmic energy, standing at the threshold of ultimate victory. Wagers were being voided. Odds makers were panicking. Error does not compute. In the stands, the crowd buzzed with disbelief. "She's cheating, right?" a reptilian warlord muttered, his scale fingers tapping nervously against the seat. No rules were broken. A Federation official responded, eyes locked on Zara's previous matches. "She's just different." The other competitors, those who had once dismissed her as a joke, now whispered amongst themselves. Some were awestruck. Others were furious. The rigid structure of the tournament, crafted over centuries to reward precision, discipline, and tradition, was being upended in real time, and no one knew what to make of it. High above the arena, the Grand Masters of the tournament, ancient beings who had overseen 1,000 cycles of this event, watched in contemplative silence. Their glowing eyes flickered with unreadable expressions. "She is an anomaly," one of them finally spoke, voice heavy with wisdom. "A disruption to the natural order." "Then why does it feel," another mused, "as though the natural order was already broken long before she arrived?" Back in the preparation chamber, Zara sat on a metal bench, casually tossing a small ball against the wall, catching it without looking. She could feel the weight of every gaze, every whisper, every moment of disbelief pressing in on her. She grinned. "Final round, huh?" she muttered to herself, spinning the ball on her fingertip. "Guess I should start trying now." Across the arena, her final opponent stood waiting. Voryx, the telekinetic warrior who had spent its entire existence mastering the ways of precision and control. The one opponent she knew wouldn't fall for tricks or distractions this time. Because this time, Voryx understood something no one else did. Zara Voss wasn't an accident. She was a next step. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the tournament's final match wasn't just a battle. It was a revolution. The arena was alive with a deep, resonant hum, the air thick with anticipation. Thousands of spectators from across the galaxy held their breath, the massive, holographic screens flashing with images of the two final contenders. On one side stood Voryx, towering and composed, its form shimmering with telekinetic energy. Its many limbs hovered above the arena floor like suspended threads of a spider's web, each one capable of warping reality itself. It radiated control, precision in every movement, a living testament to the power of tradition. On the other side, Zara Voss stood casually, adjusting the strap of her utility belt as if she were getting ready for a jog rather than the most important fight of her life. Her posture was relaxed, her eyes squinting in the blinding lights, seemingly unaffected by the overwhelming presence of her opponent. The crowd held its collective breath as the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The moment the signal sounded, the arena erupted. Voryx moved first. With a subtle flick of its wrist, it twisted the very air, causing the ground beneath Zara's feet to ripple like water. The stone floor cracked and jagged rocks rose into the air, whirling around her like deadly projectiles. Zara, however, didn't even flinch. With a wide grin, she pulled a small, glowing orb from her belt and tossed it into the air. The orb detonated with a flash of light, creating a shield of swirling particles that absorbed Voryx's telekinetic attack, like a sponge soaking up water. "Nice try, but I've got other plans," Zara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The crowd gasped in disbelief. No one had ever been able to block Voryx's attacks so effortlessly. Voryx hissed in frustration. It wasn't used to being outplayed. With a growl, the telekinetic being lashed out again, summoning a dozen massive boulders from the arena's walls and sending them hurtling toward Zara. The air crackled with the raw power of its telekinetic force. But Zara, she wasn't there anymore. With a fluid motion, she dove to the side, rolling across the ground, and popped up right behind Voryx, who was still trying to track her with its telekinetic grasp. "Come on, Vorax," Zara said, brushing off her pants. "You're going to have to do better than that if you want to catch me." Vorax snarled and spun around, its eyes flashing with fury. It conjured a vortex of psychic energy, distorting the fabric of space around Zara. A wall of energy shot up between them, an impenetrable barrier designed to trap her. For a moment, Zara stood still, her eyes locked on the barrier. She was quiet for a long beat, and then, with a mischievous grin, she pulled out something completely unexpected, a rubber chicken. "Time for a little distraction," she said, tossing the rubber chicken in the air. It flopped awkwardly, bouncing through the distorted space as if it had a life of its own. Vorax's concentration faltered, just for a moment. Its eyes locked onto the absurdity of the rubber chicken spinning through the air. That was enough. Zara lunged forward, using the momentary distraction to slip between the walls of energy, ducking under a crack in the vortex. The crowd erupted into laughter and cheers, but Vorax, now completely thrown off balance, struggled to regain control. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. In Vorax's mind, there were rules, rigid, calculated movements, precision, power, victory. But Zara was chaos personified. It's just wrong, Vorax thought. It can't be. With a growl of frustration, Vorax brought the arena to life once more. It summoned a massive energy storm above them, crackling with lightning and distortion. It was an attack like nothing the arena had ever seen before, an overwhelming display of raw, unfettered power, designed to break Zara's spirit once and for all. The storm roared. Lightning bolts lashed out from the swirling clouds, striking the ground with bone-rattling force. But Zara didn't flinch. Instead, she stood her ground, staring directly at the chaos above her. She was smiling. Was she mad? Then, as the storm raged down upon her, Zara pulled out, of all things, a giant umbrella. Zara stepped forward, eyes locked on her opponent. "All right, big guy, this is it." Without warning, she leaped into the air, twisting her body into a roll and landing right in front of Vorax. The crowd held their breath, unsure of what would happen next, the final strike. But instead of a calculated blow, Zara simply threw a punch, a ridiculous, sloppy punch. It was a move that no trained fighter would ever make. It was almost a joke. And yet, in that moment, something unexpected happened. Vorax, its senses overloaded by the chaos of the fight, misjudged the attack. It tried to block, but Zara's punch, though wild, landed squarely on its core. A pulse of energy erupted. A small crack appeared in the telekinetic being's defense. And for the first time in centuries, Vorax was caught off guard. The crowd erupted in a deafening roar. Zara had won. She had broken the game, not with brute force, but with every ounce of unpredictability, humor, and chaos that had carried her this far. In that one final, sloppy punch, she had turned the tide. As the arena exploded in cheers, Zara stood panting, grinning wide. She looked up at Vorax, still reeling from the unexpected blow. "Guess I didn't need technique after all," she said, holding up her umbrella like a champion's trophy. "Just needed to keep it fun." And with that, the galaxy had a new champion, one who would forever be remembered as the wild, unpredictable human who had broken the rules and won anyway. The arena was still vibrating with energy, the roars of the crowd echoing through the colossal structure as the final match came to an end. Zara Voss stood in the center, a beacon of disbelief and triumph. The telekinetic warrior Vorax had collapsed in defeat, its once impenetrable force field now shattered. Zara's umbrella, her ridiculous weapon of choice, stood as a symbol of the chaos she had unleashed, an unthinkable, unconventional victory. As the victorious human raised her arms in the air, the galaxy watched. The ancient traditions that had governed the tournament for millennia had been torn apart, and for the first time in recorded history, a human had claimed the title of champion. But Zara wasn't basking in glory. She looked out across the sea of faces, some in shock, others in admiration, and took a long, deep breath. "Well," she said with a grin, wiping sweat from her forehead, "guess this proves you don't have to play by the rules to win." The spectators, some still unsure whether they should cheer or protest, watched as Zara walked toward the edge of the arena. She had done the unthinkable. defeated the unbeatable, and in doing so, had changed the entire course of the tournament, and perhaps the galaxy's understanding of combat itself. As the crowd's noise began to settle into a quiet hum, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Vorax. Despite its defeat, the telekinetic being stood tall, its limbs now calm, its once furious eyes replaced with strange glimmer of reflection. "You've done what no one has ever dared to do," Vorax admitted, its voice no longer laced with hostility. "You've broken the rules of combat, and yet you've shown us something we never thought possible." Zara, catching her breath, shrugged. "I didn't break anything, Vorax. I just bent the rules a little." The telekinetic being tilted its head, its many eyes blinking in what could almost be interpreted as respect. "What you did is chaos." Zara smiled. "Exactly. Chaos isn't the absence of structure. It's the birth of it. You can't have innovation without breaking free of the old ways." Vorax was silent for a moment, processing this. It had lived for centuries, adhering to principles that had never been questioned. Control, precision, perfection, and yet it had been defeated by something unpredictable, unrefined, and chaotic. "You've turned combat into something else," Vorax said slowly. "Something alive. You've created room for growth." Zara nodded, her eyes glancing at the crowd. "Perfection doesn't leave room for evolution, Vorax. You get stuck in it. But imperfection, that's where the change happens." The crowd, once uncertain, began to applaud, not just out of respect for Zara's victory, but out of something deeper. The champions of old, the masters of combat, had prided themselves on their control. But Zara had shown them that sometimes you didn't need control. Sometimes you needed adaptability. You needed to embrace the chaos. In the aftermath, as Zara stood alone in the middle of the arena, she could feel the weight of what she had done. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a statement, a declaration of the old ways of combat, of thinking, of being. They were outdated, and in their place, a new era was beginning, one built on unpredictability, on bending the rules, on creating space for the impossible. As Zara glanced out of the vast, starry sky, the galaxy beyond seemed to open up before her. For the first time, the boundaries of tradition had been broken, and in the cracks, she could see something new, a future brimming with endless possibilities. "You really did it," a familiar voice said behind her. Zara turned to find a fellow competitor, a silent observer throughout the tournament, standing by the entrance to the arena. "Yeah," she replied, her voice soft but sure. "I guess I did." The competitor smiled, shaking their head in disbelief. "You didn't just win the tournament, Zara, you won the future." Zara paused, looking at the stars above, a thought swirling in her mind. "Maybe," she said, more to herself than anyone else, "but the future's not set. It's whatever we make of it." And with that, she turned and walked away from the arena, her figure disappearing into horizon, where the echoes of the forgotten planet would forever whisper the human who had changed everything. Zara stood on the edge of the arena, the weight of her victory settling in. The cheers were dying down, but a hum of anticipation lingered in the air. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible, and the ripples of her actions would be felt for centuries to come. But as the final echoes of the crowd faded, Zara's thoughts turned to the stars beyond, where new challenges, new opportunities waited. The old ways of combat had crumbled, but that was only the beginning. The universe was vast, and it was calling. A soft chime interrupted her reverie, a message flashing across her wrist pad. The screen displayed only a single line. "We've been watching, Zara Voss. Your methods may have broken rules, but now you've opened a door. The galaxy will want to know what you do next." Zara smirked, tapping the message away without hesitation. She stood up straighter, eyes gleaming with excitement, her gaze drifting to the distant stars. "Guess it's time to show them just how much more chaos I can make." As she walked off into the unknown, the sound of her footsteps echoed like the soft beginnings of a storm. And across the galaxy, everyone, from the farthest reaches of the Federation to the most isolated corners of the universe, knew one thing for certain. The game had changed, and no one was prepared for what came next.